I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Barry Wylant. You have seen him so far as our superb moderator for our research panels. He is one of the co-chairs for the Symposium and the graduate program director for the School of Architecture, Planning, and Landscape at the University of Calgary, and a practicing industrial designer. His research focuses on the use of design thinking approaches to identify novel innovation opportunities. His most recent research applies to approach potential voice recognition technologies that can support aging in place. He's published articles in MIT Design Issue, the UK-based The Design Journal, and is a co-editor of the book Enabling Solutions for Sustainable Living, a workshop. As an industrial designer, his product design work has allowed many Alberta-based companies to commercialize their products internationally, including medical devices, consumer electronics, and sporting goods. He's keenly interested in novel applications of design thinking to advance interdisciplinary and sustainable research inquiries. Barry, it's been phenomenal working with you up until now on the symposium and throughout. I'm very excited for your presentation. So please.
Thank you very much. I'm excited too. That was a really kind introduction. Thank you, Alana. Dean, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Whoops. There we go. Technical and that and that. And can everybody see that okay?
It looks good to me. So unless we hear something in the chat, it should be good.
Okay, great. So I've got to kind of quickly present aspects of design thinking for older adults. I think we have about 20 minutes here. So I will be kind of compressing things down and really just hitting the high points. As Alana mentioned, I am a practicing industrial designer, so it's about giving the form, the face, understanding the materials, and also the usability of a variety of different products. These are some of the ones that I've worked on and over the years, ranging from medical devices to sports and leisure products. But to dive right in and to talk about design thinking, if you Google design thinking, and you select the images, you get a number of different types of images, such as what you see right here. And a lot of these are really looking at design thinking as a process. They try to highlight design as a sort of, or design thinking as sort of a sequential or phases, different sorts of activities. And I've always had some difficulty with this type of approach because I don't think that design thinking is about following a process, but rather that it is much more about the thinking itself that might happen within any one of these particular phases. And it's more of a kind of an ethos or a Zen approach to perhaps understanding what design thinking is like. And so to begin to get a little bit of a hint of that, we're going to start off by just simply defining design. And pretty much every designer I know of has different definitions of it. My own particular take is that design is the creative, critical process of being thoughtful in making something, and in particular, in making something new. So when we're in the process of designing, we're actually in a process of anticipating a near future, something that doesn't yet exist, but we want it to exist in a particular way. And so there's aspects of being creative and putting out ideas, and hand in hand with that, almost simultaneously, there's a process of being critical of those ideas. And that leads to an iterative process in generating design ideas. And that design thoughtfulness that happens in trying to anticipate and create the new thing is something that exists in and is evident in the thing that is ultimately made. So if I pick up my coffee mug and I take a look, every little radius, every little curve, the scallop bit that actually we put our lips to, all of these things represent decisions that designers have made. And so when we look around us in the rooms that we occupy, how the door handle is set up, where the door goes, all sorts of different features, the width of the desk, the depth of it, all of these different things represent decisions that designers have made, and they're usually informed by things that are not just the design of a table, a desk, a room, or a coffee mug. So one of the ways that we can really think about this, and that makes it readily apparent, is to use a graphic design example. So I'm not necessarily plugging FedEx, but they did absolutely nail this idea of design thinking within the development of their logo. And if you look at this logo, the FED, they're squished together a bit, they overlap. But if you look at the E and the X, they're basically just touching, they're basically just kissing at those corners. And the thing that's going on with this that happens within graphic design is, of course, there's the idea to generate the word mark, to have the letters, to have them in the shape that they have, in the colors that they have. But the other thing that counts is the space that we don't do something to, the white space or the negative space. And so within the E and the X, the way that they come together is they articulate this very, very explicit arrow that's kind of a subset of the whole FedEx logo. And it talks about FedEx's ability to expedite delivery. And really the way to kind of think about this is there's the thing that we want to do, whether it's a new technology, a new product, that sort of thing. And then there's the bit that we leave undone, the white space, the negative space. And that's kind of the crucial part of design thinking, is this capacity to consider the other. And so if we think about that in terms of technology and developing new technology, there is, of course, all kinds of technology, everything from pencils and garbage cans and coffee mugs, all the way through to the latest technology. Most people, when they use technology, they're referring to things like smartphones and these types of things, but really just about anything could be a technology. The challenging aspect, though, with the contemporary technologies, the advanced technologies that we have in smartphones and computers and various other devices that we've been talking about this week, is that they engender new behaviors. And this is a really important point. If you consider even 2 years ago, the phrase "you're on mute" was not something that was part of the popular lexicon. And that's now a part of our culture. It seems to be a bit of a hiccup of joining the world in Zoom and other different types of sharing technologies. And so it really puts us in a position to not just understand the technology that we're putting forward, kind of like the logo, but also the negative space to that technology, or the adjacent space to it, which is the user. We hold our phones, we have the screen in our face, and yet it is our processing within our brains of the interfaces that we're working with that is where we need to be able to align the design effort with the goals and agendas of the users. So one of the ways that we start to think about this is an idea that's used sometimes in business speak, which is the idea of technology push versus market pull. Oftentimes, folks come up with a new technology, and it can become a bit of a square peg in a round hole thing in trying to introduce that technology into the marketplace. And sometimes folks that are developing that new technology don't necessarily think about users or the people who are using it. The flip side of that is looking at where there could be new uses within the market or within a given demographic, but failing to really consider the technology that may be required to deliver on that. So in this instance, each of these kind of becomes the other for the other, right? The negative space of technology is the user. The negative space of market pull or users and people is the technology itself. And so design thinking, the ambition behind that is to really begin to kind of consider both, that we can't just consider one, that we have to consider both of these and actually a plethora of other issues to consider it holistically. And so a chair is not just a chair. It's impossible to think of a chair or to design a chair without some conception of people who will be sitting in it. And it behooves us to also understand why they are sitting. What sort of things will they be doing within their daily lives? And of course, the idea that a chair can become an exercise tool, or it could become something else, depending on who that person is and what their goals and agendas are. And so this is really the ambition within it. And it even extends that idea, again, just to reiterate, within architecture. Architects may draw the walls, but it's the space that those walls enclose that becomes the value. It becomes, if you will, the real heart of the matter. The thing that we don't actually design is the thing that actually carries the day and has importance. So it is very much this important idea of the design of artifice, the design of technology that is honorific and fully incorporates the potential goals and agendas of people who will be using it. And so what that puts us into is a position of really understanding the agency that people bring to technology, that bring to innovation. So much of our past history on the development of technologies is seeing people who use it as consumers, which is a fundamentally passive activity, but rather to focus in on the agency that might be delivered. And one kind of design exercise that focused on that is something known as enabling solutions. And the person who brought this together is a man by the name of Ezio Manzini, based in Italy. And it's this idea that if we're going to develop something, maybe it's not about a new thing, but rather designed to serve a new set of experiences. And so this is referencing a student project that sort of takes a look at this idea of enabling solution. And say, for instance, you have a young couple, they've bought a new house, they've got some property with it, and they want to grow a garden, but they may not have that much experience in growing a garden. Meanwhile, there could be someone who's older that is now living in a condo or an apartment, and they don't have that opportunity to garden so much anymore, but they have a lot of expertise. And so the design problem becomes about how do you bring those people together? And what might that look like? Could it be an app? Could it be some kind of social media service or something that allows people to kind of connect, plant a garden, and can that then cycle into future iterations of people connecting around the idea of growing gardens and having produce or flowers or something at the end of a growing season? I think the growing season in Sweden perhaps is very, very similar to what we might have in Calgary. But it's this idea that design is there to facilitate agency and experience and not just to introduce a new technology. Now, one of the things that we need to consider if we are developing technologies are the people that we could be designing for. And a device that we can that we can utilize, and we've been participating in this with our collaborations within the symposium, is the development of personas. Now, personas are something that are developed often used in the development of new software, new apps, that sort of thing. The people who are doing it may actually undertake a variety of different surveys to understand the demographic that they're talking about. And then they use what a persona is actually is a kind of fictionalization of one of the data points within that sort of examination of a given demographic or user set. So what we might do is find a picture that may become emblematic of the people we think, or of that particular data point, and then also try to put together a bit of a backstory. And this can help designers have greater empathy for the people that they're designing. So this is another way to approach it, though, is sometimes you don't have the luxury of doing that kind of initial survey work, but you still need to be able to understand a little bit of who you're designing for. And so in this instance, what we did is, based on the literature, we were able to construct a technology for an older person. And then the other thing that we did is we augmented the persona with information about their current health status, health conditions, and some of their habits and interests and that sort of thing. And then what we did, we were working actually with a physical therapist on this, who helped us in kind of tuning, if you will, the description of the health conditions that a given person may have. But we also used it relative to focus groups. And we brought in experts, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, and physical therapists to help us understand and calibrate the health conditions that we were putting forward. And so in that way, we actually were able not necessarily to go to the end users, but to go to a group of people that helped us develop and tune and hone our personas so that we could, again, build up a more realistic understanding of the people that we might be designing for. This particular persona that you're looking at was developed as part of a research project to understand opportunities to innovate in using some of the voice recognition technology that could be used to support aging in place. Now, another tool that we have, and this one is actually, I think, really, really useful at understanding people's goals relative to technology, and that is task analysis. And so with task analysis, one of the things that we can take a look at are, what are people's routines? What are they already doing? Sometimes we get so caught up in trying to introduce the new thing that we don't take a moment to really understand, well, what are people already doing? And are there ways of leveraging what they're doing to perhaps advance and develop new technologies, or to look for opportunities where technology can be inserted or intervened to deliver something. So there are, again, ways of understanding what people are already doing. There are ways of using that to identify opportunities for innovation. And we can then develop new task analyses to understand a little bit of how the implementation of a proposed technology might work within people's lives and work within their goals. Another thing that we might do is co-design. Co-design is a way of kind of sharing the design process with a target user group. Oh, one thing I need to add about the task analyses is that, again, we tested out those task analyses within a focus group of some expert users, key informant users, again, occupational therapist, speech language pathologist, and a physical therapist. The co-design project that I'm going to present to you is one where we took a look at what might be possible if we were to intervene with and introducing supportive living as part of a typical condominium development within Calgary. So it's kind of an alternative to nursing homes, and I think it's something that gets at some of the ambitions that Barry was speaking of, or not so much speaking about, but has researched in terms of integrating elder care within existing urban fabric. With this, we undertook a couple of co-design workshops. The first one, again, was more with an expert group, working with developers, people from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, working with the City of Calgary, and people who are also providing supportive living. And we had representatives from some of the supportive living facilities in Calgary, as well as Alberta Health Services, to take a look at what might be involved in trying to pursue such a project. And then we had a second co-design workshop where we worked specifically with seniors to be able to examine some proposed designs to get their feedback on use and innovations and features that we could incorporate. We were able to put in front of them common areas and get their input on what might be effective within that. Whoops, wrong button. Excuse me. As well as taking a look at specific features that could be incorporated within individual suites. And one of the things that I think that we found, and I want to do a shout out to Navjot if she's in the audience, is we had a tour of the Brenda Stratford Center, the new Brenda Stratford Center in Calgary. And many of the ideas that were explored and discussed with seniors in this particular setting seem to have been implemented for real within the Brenda Stratford design. So it was quite rewarding to see that we were eliciting information that is becoming, I think, current within the design of that. The aspect, though, again, to keep in mind is this way of considering the other, of bringing in that perspective in order to use and advance designs, that we do enough design work that we allow the voice of the other, if that makes sense, to actually resonate in the further development of the design. And so to quickly wrap up, the takeaways. design thinking requires that we think about the other. It's both the intention that we're trying to create, but also all of those other contextual factors that could be impactful, including the people who will be living with it. It is a kind of visual, spatial, and experiential consideration for those things. It entails both the creative and the critical, which then engenders, I think, iterations and an iterative approach to design. It is grounded in a notion that people have agency, their own goals and agendas, that we can make room to test speculations in the development of personas and task analyses with experts, and that within the co-design effort itself, we are seeking to spark good questions, that we are doing just enough design to actually support a very useful conversation about the eventual outcome of it, and that ultimately we are hoping in the creation of the new thing that we are optimizing it and making it the best new thing that we can. And so with that, I pass on a hearty namaste and thank you all for your participation in this week's symposium. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have 2 minutes for questions. There's actually 2 in the chat right now. If you don't mind answering a few.
For sure. We have some time.
How would you apply the concepts of design thinking like you went through to a project like Garden Loft that I know that you're a part of, or something like a wearable technology that Dr. Liu spoke of this morning? So for those with dementia.
Oh, for sure. The idea of that is actually setting it up as a bit of a process where we examine problem space first, and then we start getting into solutions. So, we would start early on by doing literature review, say for instance, around dementia and around previous technologies and precedent technologies that have been used relative to that. We would then seek to try to identify and create some personas of folks with dementia that capture that information. We then would want to talk to experts and tune and calibrate those personas just to make sure that we've captured it, because we don't have all the answers. This is one of the things that I think is really, really important, is that we want to work in an interdisciplinary way and bring in the expertise and the voices that have that expertise to contribute in creating those types of things. And then as we're starting to develop ideas, to figure out ways that we can carve things up in baby steps, that we don't sort of overload the testing with prototypes and that sort of thing right out of the gate with folks. So are there some mini experiments that we can do? Could we make some maquettes out of paper or foam or other sorts of things? Can we evaluate how people respond to things like shape or use or grip or wearability, and then start working then on how they might progress through a virtual environment? So we want to break it up and baby step it and use the design process to isolate lots of tiny questions that we then try to bring together in an ultimate or penultimate prototype that allows us to test the holistic nature of the experience. So I think it's much more about making room for the inquiry and making room for lots of small steps, lots of small movements to test out and examine different things.
So I guess with that in mind, do you ever revisit a space after it was in use to modify future designs? And that's the question. Do you visit it after to modify the design?
Yeah, post-occupancy evaluation is a thing. And so it does become part of how we gather data to inform future design work. And I think one of the things that becomes really important in understanding that is once something is constructed, it actually becomes really expensive to change it. And so it's much more, and this is why we use precedent so much within design. We want to look and see what other precedents have done. We want to see what the results are of that. We want to take a look at other kind of post-occupancy reports if they exist. We'll also try to connect maybe sometimes with previous designers and building managers and people that are involved with things to find out what the shortcomings may be from a previous exercise, and then looking ahead to the next exercise. And I think one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that we're actually incorporating and ballooning the information that we have in the design of technology, in the design of objects, in the design of buildings, so that we can actually have a far greater resource almost an expanding library of precedent and forays that we can tap into to inform subsequent work. So it's always iterative. There's always a kind of conversation. Even with projects that are completed, we can learn from them.
One more question, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Out of the many projects you have related to aging in place, during COVID, what have you seen to have the most positive impact, specifically relating to seniors? And how has that informed your direction for the upcoming years?
Actually, in terms of the project work that I've been working on, it slowed things down. We did get a SSHRC grant to do the next phase of research work on the Jack Long Foundation project with the public-private partnership and the insertion of supportive living within a typical condo tower. But unfortunately, when COVID came up, there were a variety of other impacts that happened that really slowed that down. So I think for me personally, my experience is now to regroup and to then see how we can begin to pivot off of this. I think that there are, as Andrew was speaking about, there are a variety of opportunities to reconnect people and to get past the isolation that we've all experienced. And that to me is a really, really significant challenge. And part of it is just, understanding how we can, in a communal way, begin to incorporate both and get past the isolation, but also incorporate perhaps some of the augmented reality and virtual reality that Barry presented that might actually help people share in some of those experiences and share in some of those activities. So to me, that's all a big open question of where that can end up going.
Well, I really appreciate that. Barry has one more question. We have about a minute. Though, is there a report to share on the design project for BSF?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Is there a report to share on the design project for Brenda Stratford?
Not that I'm aware of. We didn't work with Brenda Stratford when we were pursuing our other one. It just happened to be that there was a synchronicity in our findings and in the way that the Brenda Stratford was developed. So I think if there are any post-occupancy reports surrounding that, it might be appropriate to follow up with the Brenda Stratford centers directly.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Really, your talk was amazing, and I have so many more questions personally. So I apologize for the future bombardment of emails.
No problem. My email was in the presentation, bwylant@ucalgary.ca.
All righty. Well, thank you. Gina, let's bring you back up for the final collaboration mashup. And Barry, thank you so much again.
Oh, hi again, everybody. Wonderful to have Barry present about design thinking, because I'm actually one of Barry's students, so you may see some similarities in the collaboration mashups that we're doing today, and some of the personas and co-design kind of things that he was talking about in his presentation. So it's kind of nice for you to have see a little bit of kind of behind the scenes of some of the theory and background information for these kind of approaches. So we're here at our final collaboration mashup for our two-day conference, the fourth and final. And today, actually, we're going to be going to different rooms than you usually were, because we're focusing in on the challenges that you were looking at this morning's conference, or at this morning's collaboration mashup. So I want to, if Dean can share his screen to show the whiteboards. I think I'll kind of describe some of the things that you can do. First we can do, again, just as a reminder, the whiteboards are available. If you go to the table that you need, the whiteboards, you click the whiteboard symbol at the bottom of the screen. And of course, today you're going to be going to a slightly different desk or a slightly different space than usual. because we're going to be focusing on the challenges. So this fourth final session, we're going to be looking at the things that you can do to work together to address challenges experienced by older adults. And here we're going to talk a little bit about, so if you move it up a little bit there, perfect. So the two questions that we're going to be looking into is looking at the challenges. I want to, if you guys can discuss in your new groups, why you're interested in that challenge, i.e. why that challenge is meaningful to you, and then what unique skills or knowledge do you bring to addressing that challenge. And here is your opportunity to talk about personal experiences and also your professional experiences. So this is where at the very beginning, I was like, okay, we're trying to avoid the alphabet soup. Here's where you get to talk about and bring in your professional experience and kind of share your background and your area. And then the final thing I want to highlight at the bottom, because we are doing a bit of future thinking here, I've highlighted 2 upcoming grant opportunities for collaborative approaches in the future. I'm aware of Canadian opportunities coming up. One that's coming up, there is a deadline for a project outline coming up in December, and one where the application deadline is in January. And I would kind of, if others know of potential other funding opportunities, there'll also be take some time to kind of share about that. Now I'm going to just remind you of the different rooms that you can go to and the challenges in those rooms. So for Persona 1 table here in blue, it's the Margareta table. And the challenge that, if you're interested in addressing the challenge of supporting older adult carers, then you can go to the Margareta table. So that's supporting older adult peer carers. So those are older adults who care for other older adults. So if that's a challenge that you're interested in, you can go to the Persona 1 table, Margareta. The Persona 2 ISAC, the challenge there is access to appropriate, that is socially and culturally sensitive preventative care, such as social and medical supports for maintaining wellness. So if you're interested in that challenge, you can go to Persona 2 table, which is ISAC. The Persona 3 Marianne, the challenge there is adapting technologies to match the capabilities of older adults. So if you're interested in that, go to the Marianne table. Persona 4 Carl, the challenge is addressing isolation and community building in winter cities. Again, go to the Persona 4 table or room for Carl for that challenge. And then the final challenge and the final persona is Persona 5 June. And the challenge is managing transitions from living independently at home to living in an independent or supportive community. So that's the challenge for Persona 5. And you'll notice that the 2 grant suggestions that I have here do apply to some of these challenges. For example, there is an NRC Aging in Place Challenge program, which is specifically looking at social isolation. So that one could work quite well if you're interested in addressing the challenge for Carl. And then the other challenge is, or the other funding support is for care transitions of older adults, facilitated by digital health technologies. And that could really apply for the June challenge. So I'll release you back to the room. And if you have challenges that you're interested in, you can go there. I'll post some of these to the chat so you can also look on the whiteboard to see what challenge and what room might be of interest to you.